Is Daredevil Born Again setting up one of the most controversial Punisher storylines in all of comics? And how does it seem like it'll handle some of the character's darker ramifications? Born Again and the Netflix Daredevil series have both prominent themes of the impact that vigilantes have on the social hierarchy, and Born Again has already revealed that 30% of the Hell's Kitchen police force has resigned over the prominence of vigilantes. If heroes are cleaning up the streets without ramifications, then why should the police officers face criticism and lawsuits, especially if heroes can do all of the work? At least this is the central question that has been posed in Born Again, and we can see how the public is taking to the presence of masked vigilantes and fighters and how it's shifting. In the second episode, we see that one of the off-duty police officers has a Punisher skull tattooed on his forearm, and not only does this work into one of Frank Castle's most famously disturbing stories, but is actually rooted in a very real problem that we have in the real world. So come along with us today. Let's break down how the Punisher had become used as a symbol for some law enforcement officials, and what Frank Castle himself has to say about this, and the strange police Punisher cult. In 2011, a man by the name of Frank Jude Jr. was beaten within an inch of his life, attacked by a group of rogue Milwaukee police officers who had taken it upon themselves to deliver their own brand of justice, which was not condoned by the department. They called themselves the Punishers and adopted the logo of the Marvel character, and the logo has since been shown within various police departments across the country. In 2018, the writing team for the Punisher took the problem straight to Frank Castle himself, and Frank abhors the police officers who steal his iconography to use it as a justification to brutalize the people that they are meant to be protecting. Frank says that the two of them are fundamentally different, since police officers swore an oath to protect people. They did not join a crusade to punish people with the same ferocity as he does. Frank Castle knows who he is, as he is the final line when the justice system fails, at least in his own mind. But that does not mean that he condones anyone else falling down the same spiral. The exact quote from the comics that Frank himself says is this: "You don't do what I do. No one does. You boys need a role model? His name is Captain America. I'm sure he would love to have you." The idea of comparing cops to superheroes here is not the problem. The problem is that they have specifically gravitated towards the Punisher of all heroes, who is arguably the very worst choice for law enforcement to idolize. Frank Castle in the comics idolizes Captain America more than any other hero, despite the fact that the two could not be further apart in terms of their morals and how they approach things. Frank Castle enlisted in the Marine Corps because of Captain America, and in the Civil War storyline, the lines between heroes gets muddied, especially since they were fighting each other over the registration program. Captain America quite famously led a team of rebels who stood up to the institution and demanded that the heroes retain their rights to conceal their identities as they see fit. This also led to some villains crossing lines and being pulled into this morally gray area, including some C-list villains by the name of Goldbug and Plunder, who Tony Stark enlisted to aid him in the war. Frank, however, saw that the registration site was employing thieves and killers to his side, so Frank took matters into his own hands and killed both of them. Steve then went off on Frank and physically beat him to an inch of his life. But Frank just stood down and let Captain America absolutely wail on him without lifting a finger to defend himself. Then when Captain America yells at him to fight back, the Punisher simply responds, "Not against you." This shows the reverence that the Punisher has for Captain America, because in his own mind, he understands that the world needs Steve Rogers, just as much as he believes that it needs him. The world of superheroes needs a moral standard, someone to look up to inspire, to imitate. Many of the world's greatest heroes see characters like Captain America or Superman as the gold standard, the hero that they want to live up to. And most of them, unfortunately, fail. Most of them cannot meet the standards set by these heroes, but they continue to fight for it every day. Whenever they put on the suit and take to the streets, they do the best that they can with what they have, asking themselves what Cap or Clark would do. And this is what makes so many superhero stories so interesting. Without characters like these two, the heroes of the respective world would not have a moral standard to aspire to, and they would descend into violence and lawlessness, with characters like the Punisher becoming more prominent than Captain America. Frank knows this, and he wants cops to hold themselves to the same standards that the superheroes do, something greater than themselves. They won't be perfect, they will stumble, they will falter, they will fail, but they will keep trying to live up to the standards set by Steve Rogers. Never will they willingly bring themselves down to Frank Castle's level, because even Frank knows that he is not worth admiring. In Born Again, it seems like this cohort of cops will take Frank and use him as an example of someone who is cleaning up the streets without being bound by the same morals as some of the more virtuous heroes like Cap, or even Daredevil. In their own twisted perception, they believe that the ends justify the means, and that if they need to spread fear across Hell's Kitchen to keep the criminals afraid of ever getting caught, then the lives of a few street rats is a price worth paying. We've seen a few heroes use this principle in their lives as crime fighters before, and one of the characters that uses fear most effectively is actually Daredevil. His reputation as the devil of Hell's Kitchen is built on the idea that if you encounter Daredevil, you will live to tell the tale, assuming that you will ever be able to talk again though. He will break bones, crush heads, throw people off of rooftops. Daredevil though has a very strict policy against killing. This perfectly encapsulates what he and Frank have their debate over on the rooftop, where Matt tells Frank that he believes in redemption and the betterment of mankind. He wants to give people the chance to try again, and even though he is much more violent than Cap is, and instills much more fear than Steve ever has, he believes they are following the same principle. Daredevil is still looking up to Steve and his ideals, even if his methods deviate from how Steve would solve problems. Because Matt Murdock wants people to get a chance to try again. Frank wants to hit them once and to make sure they stay down. This is the line that he gives to Daredevil, but the line that Daredevil will never cross. In fact, in Born Again, the main reason why he retired the mantle of Daredevil in addition to Foggy's death is because he tried to kill Bullseye that day. And even though Bullseye did not die, Matt crossed that line. He became okay with killing, even for a split moment. He found an excuse. He found a reason to murder someone, and he took it. This was his turning point, a point that he believes he can never come back from. And there was one particular storyline titled Moral Authority from the run titled Speak of the Devil, a fascinating run where Daredevil did actually inadvertently kill someone. He was running his night as Daredevil, business as usual, but one of the thugs that he had gotten to a fight with died as a result of Matt's beating, and even though this was unintentional, he understood the consequences of his action. Daredevil turned himself in for the crime, and said that he needed to be held accountable for his actions, even if the manslaughter was involuntary. He understands the power of the legal system, and as a lawyer, his goal is to serve justice from the inside and the outside. Daredevil does not barge in and interfere with any action that he morally disagrees with. Daredevil is designed to step in whenever the legal system fails. He is a safeguard from the cracks in the system of judgment that we as a country have designed, but he never goes around and murders indiscriminately. Frank's approach is so far out of bounds for any hero, and so the idea that the police would choose Frank of all idols and someone to look up to is very scary, even for Frank Castle. If they want to serve people, uphold the law, and apprehend criminals properly, then they can look up to Steve Rogers and everything that CAP stands for. Perhaps the most important detail of this entire story, though, is that Frank himself condemns these officers, and we are confident that he will do the same in Born Again. We hope that he takes a stance against these cops in order to uphold the sanctity of the system, and that both he and Matt can be there to catch the ones who fall by the wayside in their own very distinct ways. They don't have to measure up to someone like Cap. That should not be expected of anyone, hero, police officer, or otherwise. Captain America should be the end of the spectrum that shows the world of heroes and what they can achieve. And if police officers, either from Marvel or in real life, want an icon to look up to, the Punisher is one of the worst choices that they could make. But anyway, friends, what do you think about this? What do you think of the storyline with the Punisher they're introducing with this cult of police? And what are your thoughts on Marvel tackling a really controversial subject and story? But for more updates on Daredevil, Born Again, analysis, and theories, Hulk smash that subscribe button and have a great day.